In this episode, I talk with Sarah Von Bergen, who helps people spend their time, money, and energy on purpose. We talk about money as a path to self-awareness and how we spend as a reflection of our self-worth. We also talk about the power of only indulging in foods you love, a helpful tip to avoid perfectionism, the impact of doing 3 self-care actions on your own personal financial bottom line, and maybe even your bottom if it involves food. And Sarah shares tips for traveling and living the life you want to live no matter how much money you make. Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. I was first introduced to Sarah Von Bergen's work through Ksenia Avdulova's Woken Wired podcast. I love not only Sarah's approach to money, but also that she shares methods and practices that bring more happiness into your life by becoming empowered in the area of your personal finances. If you love this interview and want more of a business, blogging, and social media angle, you might want to check out that Woken Wired interview. In today's interview, though, we talk about money as a path to transformation, self-discovery, and self-care. Sarah started her blog Yes and Yes in 2008. She tells people that it's a lifestyle blog for smart and funny people, a lot of people. Over time, she slowly but surely found an audience of 13,000 plus daily readers and has been featured in places like Lifehacker, Pro Blogger, Glamour, and Forbes, among others. She has an e-course about money and happiness, another one about changing our habits. She created an app, 3 calendars, and even signed with a literary agent. She has traveled to over 40 countries. She's on TV once a month, and she is hilariously funny and down to earth. Thank you so much for being with us, Sarah.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
I love your style of writing.
Thank you.
I got your email, what was it, a couple weeks ago from Morocco?
Mm-hmm.
And you're so witty and you're so funny. And you started writing in a blog when blogging was sort of just getting going, right?
Yes, absolutely. I have been blogging. When did I even start? 2000. I've been blogging for 11 years, which makes me an internet dinosaur. Like I had a Blogspot blog. I used a Oh my God, I love it. Yeah, with like a template. And you know when we would like give each other awards, like, and then you would like have to forward the award to a bunch of other people. And oh my gosh, yes. Like and truly to this day, I am still in real life friends with and professionally connected to people that I met back then. Like I have done brand projects, like huge 4 and 5 figure brand projects with people who started out as like fashion bloggers and now work in corporate America, and we're friends and we still help each other out even a decade later.
So over the last 11 years, what's been the most transformative part for you about running a business, writing in a blog, sharing your life with the world, teaching?
Oh gosh, deep questions. I would say just writing about the things that are important to me and getting feedback on them and developing relationships with my readers, with other writers, with other, I call them internet people. And it's been really enlightening to see the way the world has changed in the last 11 years. Because when you have been writing online for 11 years, you can look back through the archives and like see the way you've changed, see the way the world has changed, like the things you used to believe, the words you used to use, the approaches and the methods you used to deal with things, and how much you've evolved. And, you know, having done all this in a public space and being challenged or held accountable or supported by these incredible people who've been reading what I write for a decade.
I love the idea that you can write about what's current in your life and what's moving you and shaking you and inspiring you, and that you can build a business around that.
Yeah.
Do you think it's as easy today to do what you did as it was then?
I think it was much easier to get started then because there was just a lot less competition. And I always feel like I have to be forthcoming with the fact that I came to blogging with the deck stacked very much in my favor. I've been getting paid to write since I was 20. So I've been a professional writer for 20 years. I used to work in marketing. So like I was ready to be a successful blogger pretty early on. And also I'm an INTJ, I'm an Enneagram 3, I'm a Virgo, I'm an eldest child. And if you know what those things mean, you know that my work ethic is verging on problematic. so it was...
Wait.
Was able
Aren't you in Minnesota too?
Yes.
You should add that to the stack.
Yes. Yeah. So like the Midwestern Minnesota work ethic is bananas.
Yeah.
And the statistics around people who start blogs and quit them, 70% of blogs are abandoned within 3 months. So like I had the right skill set to be successful with this. And B, I had the right personality type and brain chemistry to be successful at this. And I think it's important to be honest about that, because I don't want people who have tried and not necessarily been as successful to beat themselves up, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into being successful in this incredibly competitive field. And I've worked hard, of course, but I was also lucky in a lot of ways.
I noticed that. So you said to me earlier when we got before we started recording, you said, I'm great with money. And I remember hearing
I am.
I love hearing someone say that, just like matter of factly, I'm great with money.
Yeah.
I remember hearing when I first was introduced to your work with the Woke and Wired podcast by Ksenia, you guys talked a lot about money. And then when I searched your blog or looked at all of your work, I was like, oh, how cool. Well, you have that Start Here page, and there's some of probably what I'm guessing to be some of the more popular articles that people are searching on your blog. And you see things like how to get over a breakup and how to get what you want, how to create new habits, how to stop buying shit you don't need, how to let go of perfectionism. Can you talk a little bit about how you use your life as it's not like a blank slate, but it's almost like you're using your life to put it out there into the world, and then how you see others respond to your work? Like, have there been articles that surprised you that people like totally went gaga over and you weren't expecting?
Oh God, of course. I would say something that has been really enlightening to me. So when I started Yes and Yes, I was an ESL teacher at a nonprofit. I was making $16 an hour, and I live in Minneapolis. And, the cost of living in Minneapolis is not like San Francisco or anything, but it's, it's a major city. Like, it's not super cheap. So I was making $16 an hour. I was paying off $50,000 worth of school debt. I lived by myself. I didn't get support from a partner or my parents. And with all that said, I was able to live by myself, pay off my debt, travel internationally, and wear cute clothes and like do fun things while making $16 an hour. And I, at this point, wasn't talking about it. I wasn't blogging about it. I was just living my life, sharing some photos about what I was doing, talking about what I was doing. And I heard through the grapevine that a friend of a friend believed that I had a trust fund, because he didn't think that it was possible for, an ESL teacher at a nonprofit to have the life that I had.
Hilarious.
While making, my salary. And that was the moment that I realized that what I was doing was unusual and unique. And again, I had not been writing about money. I had not been talking about my money philosophy anywhere. And that was the moment that I realized that this sounds sort of grandiose, but like I was a living example of what was possible and that people had noticed. And so that's when I sort of realized like what I'm doing is noteworthy. And I imagine that people would benefit from learning how I navigate money, because clearly I'm doing it in a way that most people are not. So that was I never went into this thinking like, I'm going to be a living example of what's possible. It sort of just happened. Like I was just doing my thing and living my life. And then people started to be like, how are you doing this? Like I saved enough money at this $16 an hour job to quit my job and travel internationally for 11 months. And at my going away party, multiple friends who I knew earned double or triple what I did pulled me aside and were like, how did you do this? Like, how is this possible? And I thought, like, how are you not doing it? Like, you work in IT. Like, I don't understand how you're not doing this. So that was sort of when I realized that the example that I was setting was noteworthy and that I should do something about it. And in terms of stuff that I've written that has blown up, something that I've learned in my online life and also sort of just in life in general that I wish I would have known sooner is to like let go of any expectation of what will or will not be successful or what will or will not be effective. All you can do is just keep trying things and then accept the results without judgment or shame. because I've certainly written things where I'm like, this is mind blowing. This is going to go viral. This is going to be my first million. And then, it gets like 4 comments. The most popular thing that I have ever written that went so viral, it crashed my site 4 times and I had to move to a different host.
What?
Is a listicle called 23 Ways to Treat Yourself Without Buying or Eating Anything.
Wait, can you repeat that?
23 ways to treat yourself without buying or eating anything.
I've read that.
Yeah, everybody. And I mean, it is a helpful post. It's great. Because most of us self-soothe by shopping or eating mindlessly. So it is a really good post, but I mean, I wrote it in like half an hour. Yeah. And meanwhile, I've written posts about like communicating your boundaries and changing your mindset around money and, like really, I think things that are like very in-depth and life-changing. Nope. Everybody wants a listicle, which I mean, no shame. I love a listicle as well. So
why don't we get into your secrets about money?
Oh yeah.
Because you're clearly doing it differently. You told me earlier that you traveled to like at least 40 countries.
Mm-hmm.
Travel isn't cheap. I mean, certain countries are cheap.
Yes,
but the
sure.
flight.
And usually the cheap countries cost a lot to get there.
Exactly. So tell us some of your secrets.
Okay. Well, I will tell you the crux of it. And it's like most things that it's simple, but not easy. The truth is, if you can figure out what makes you happy and you can align your spending with it, the rest will fall into place. So, I mean, okay, Sarah, that's so easy. Great. So then what? But what I have found is a surprising number of us don't actually know what makes us happy, or we haven't stopped to really consider those things. We have inadvertently absorbed the messaging from our family, from the media, from our literal neighbors, from our coworkers, from our friends about what should make us happy. And then we pursue those things without taking time to think about them. We spend tons of time and money and energy pursuing things that may or may not be right for us. And then we are unfulfilled when we get them. And we feel shame about having spent all that time and money and energy going after something that's not actually right for us. And then we self-medicate by mindlessly buying more shit that we don't need. And then it's more shame and more debt, and it goes on and on and on. But when you can take the time to figure out what makes you happy, figure out where your money is going, and recalibrate all of that, it can change everything. And like, I'm not going to say that, money can or can't buy happiness, but I think that money is kind of like health. Like, just because you're in good health doesn't mean that your life is perfect and you're happy all the time, but being sick does make you unhappy. Having a ton of money isn't necessarily going to make you happy, but being like problematically broke, where you're like constantly stressed and you're afraid your electricity is going to get turned off, that will absolutely stress you out and make you unhappy.
I think one thing that stood out to me in what you just said is knowing where your money is going. And I remember when I've run a business for almost 20 years. And the first, it's crazy. The first 10 years I worked with people one-on-one. So I wasn't really having a great need to do accounting. Mm-hmm. But then in the second 10 years, I started making products and trying to figure out what it meant to be an entrepreneur. And at some point, probably a business mentor or coach was like, gee, you really ought to file books and learn how to use QuickBooks and that kind of thing. So I learned how to use QuickBooks, did my accounting for several years until I passed it off to someone. But the reason why I mention that is your whole outlook clearly changes when you know what you spend your money on. And even if you just business aside, look at your personal account and say, how much money do I spend on coffee per month? Or how much money do I spend on going out to eat per month? Mm-hmm. Can sometimes be pretty eye-opening.
Oh my gosh, yes. And the thing is, and one of the exercises that I teach in my coaching and in my courses is a really specific way to figure that out, because so many of us say things like, my priority is spending time with friends and family. My priority is my health. My priority is travel. And then we look at our bank accounts and we've spent, $200 on travel over the course of the year, but somehow spent $1,400 on throw pillows at Target. And that is incredibly common. It is incredibly common. But because we haven't looked at our bank account, we don't know that. And also most people are terrified of money. One of the exercises that I teach in my courses, I literally preface it by saying I'm going to tell you to do this. If you cry afterwards, that's totally normal. Like whatever result you get from this exercise, you are not the first person to get that result. And I promise whatever number you come up with, there's somebody else that I've worked with who had a bigger number. But it's incredibly triggering. It's so emotional. There's so much shame attached to it. So when you can get it figured out and you can understand how to put your money where your happy is and how to stop buying shit you don't need, how to stop chasing things that aren't right for you, how to stop, self-soothing through purchasing, it can change everything. You can quit the job that you hate. You can leave the relationship that you're only staying in because you can't afford an apartment by yourself. You can, finally go to therapy. Like you can fly across the country and see your grandma. There are so many things that you can do that are available to you when you get your money stuff in order. And I'm not even talking about you need to make $100,000 in order for these things to be possible. You can meet your own needs very frequently at a lower price point than you think.
So how did you do that for yourself when you were making $16 an hour?
Well, I figured out what made me happy. I figured out what didn't, and then I just stopped buying stuff that didn't make me happy, which sounds so simple, but it's sort of like the way I equate it is if I said to most people, for the next month, you're only going to eat food that you truly love. You're only going to eat food that you truly love. You're not going to mindlessly eat pizza rolls that give you indigestion. You're not going to snack on combos that suck all the spit out of your mouth. You're only eating food that you truly love. And that doesn't feel deprivational. It feels exciting. Oh my gosh. And then I'm going to have those really nice French style scrambled eggs for breakfast. And then I'm going to have a really amazing pasta dish, with a beautiful sauce for lunch. And most of us, if we only ate food that we truly loved, we would be probably, eating less food and eating less junk. It's the same way with spending. If you only actually spent on things that truly added to your life, that truly brought you joy, you would probably be spending a lot less. There'd be a lot fewer oh, it's on sale at Target. Oh, I'm upset with something in my life, so I'm scrolling through the Anthropology sales section. Oh, I saw my friend and she had this thing and it made me feel bad about myself, so now I'm buying one too. But if you only actually shopped with intention, most of us would buy much, much less.
It's funny because when you say that about food, it feels so freaking indulgent.
Yes.
And then you can translate that to shopping.
Mm-hmm.
It also feels indulgent. And then it leads me to believe is this actually a worthiness issue? Is it do I deserve the best things?
Yes. The overlap between food issues and money, honestly, they're almost exactly the same. The issues with worth, the issues with numbing out and buffering, the issues with mindless behavior. And also most of us were raised in families or in households with screwed up beliefs around both of these things. So there's a huge overlap. But in terms of a lot of my students will spend tons of money on their partner or their kids and then repeatedly buy themselves the worst version of whatever, which then falls apart and then they have to buy more. So they'll send their kids to the really expensive hockey camp, but repeatedly buy $12 cardigans from Walmart that are falling apart. And now they've bought 5 of those cardigans and they should have just bought one decent cardigan and it would have been cheaper.
Yeah, it's how they shop in Europe. I remember when I was an exchange student when I was 16 in Germany, I remember the kids wearing the same clothes for 3 days in a row, but they were super high quality.
Yeah.
And they didn't break down. And so it was fine.
Yes. Yeah. And also a lot of it is, the vast majority of my clients and students are women. And many of us, we have demanding jobs, we have a partner, we have pets, we have kids, and we put those things before ourselves. We end the day completely exhausted and we haven't done anything to take care of ourselves. And so instead of having things sprinkled throughout the week that are going to feel lovely and are going to help us take care of ourselves, we buy things. And so one of the things that I teach is every Sunday, I want you to look at your calendar and schedule 3 things that you can look forward to. Because when you are regularly doing lovely things for yourself, and some of these things are free and some of these things cost money, but if you are regularly taking care of yourself, you're much less likely to self-medicate by buying things you don't need.
And how did you figure that out? Were you one day because I've done this too, oh shit, why am I on this online shopping site now? And I wasn't for a few months and then I was back then. Did you put it together for yourself?
It was more that this was something that I naturally did. And when I started coaching people on this and I told them that I did this, they were like, oh my God, I've never even thought of that. And then I specifically remember one of the first times I ran my Bank Boost course, I have an accountability thing where every Monday there's a different challenge. And I'll say like, what are you doing this week? People comment. And then on Sunday, I tag them to make sure that they did it. And so the challenge was, what are 3 things that you have scheduled for yourself to take care of yourself? And,
so indulgent.
And so people were sharing them. And then there were multiple comments from people saying, oh my God, like when I look back at the last 2 months of my life, I realize that I've only done like 2 things for myself. And this is why I've been spending. Or, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired by this because I didn't even realize this was missing from my life. And this is why I was wandering around Home Goods buying like novelty pumpkin decor because I haven't seen my friends in 2 months, or like I haven't gone out to eat, or I haven't like been outside other than walking the dog for like 3 months.
Okay, so that's the first homework for the listeners is list out 3 nice things to do for yourself and watch how that impacts you.
And again, they don't have to be like, it can be like, one of my favorites is meeting friends. I live 3 blocks from a lake that has a walking trail around it, meeting my friends, and we bring coffee in our travel mugs and walk around the lake and talk. It costs $0. It's Lake Nokomis that I live by. Or wait, which one is the one? Lake Hiawatha, Lake Nokomis. The one that has the path around. I live by 2 lakes. One has a path, one doesn't. But it costs $0. I'm getting outside. I'm walking the dog. I'm catching up with my friend. And it's a really lovely thing to do. And sometimes, coffee. And some of the stuff that I'm doing is like, dinner at La Grassa, which is expensive. But some of it is like meeting a friend for a matinee at the Riverview, which costs $2.50.
And I imagine you could probably overlay this, like you said, into food. So if you find yourself like eating sweet stuff at night before you're going to sleep and you're like, I really shouldn't be eating now because I'm just going to like sleep for the next how many hours?
Yeah.
Like, why am I doing that? And what is the self-care that I'm not giving myself? So I have to do this in order to feel better for the end of the day, right?
Yes. And then also work backwards. And this is sort of like deeper, more advanced work. But if you can work back and figure out what the trigger was, why did you start numbing out? Like, work back 20 minutes, an hour earlier in the day. What happened that made you feel like you wanted to be on Amazon? What happened that you're wandering around Target? What happened that you're eating the whole bag of pizza rolls?
Well, and sometimes I think it's just like comfort because there's no space because we schedule every damn minute of our life. And then it's sort of like those activities like scrolling on Instagram or whatever, where we're doing in our little brains, but it's like sort of space.
Oh yeah. And something that I am very actively working on myself, I haven't perfected it, but something that I'm really working on is, what is the actual problem here and what is an actual solution? Because very frequently we will all do this thing where like, the problem is I had a fight with my partner. The problem is I'm worried about this bill. The problem is I'm exhausted. And then we try to solve the problem by buying something from Amazon. Shockingly enough, buying something from Amazon does not solve the problem that you had an argument with your partner. And, by eating a giant wedge of Parmesan cheese does not solve that bill that I'm worried about. And it sounds so silly when I say it, but we all do it.
Yeah. So for those of you who are listening who use flower essences, this is a great exercise because once we actually figure out what the problem is, we can take a flower essence for it.
Yes.
Instead of lose weight and be richer.
Instead of buying something you don't need, or instead of eating something that's going to upset your stomach and give you indigestion. I think something else that is important is we all have our own motivations for changing our relationship with money. And I think it is important to find a motivation that resonates with you. I think especially a lot of women, especially like nice progressive women, we villainize money and we feel guilty about earning a decent amount. And also like if we have friends with debt, we might feel weird about paying off our debt. But so I think it's important to find motivation that resonates with you. This might be like, I'm trying to model positive money behavior for my children. I want to pay off my debt so I can quit my job. Like my parents are aging and I want to take care of them. I know I have a lot of students who are trying to stop their spending issues because of climate change, because buying like fast fashion and buying stuff you don't need and then throwing it away is terrible for the earth. So there are lots of different reasons to change your relationship with money and consumption. And if you can find the right one for you, it can really sort of unlock that stuff.
Let's talk about debt for a minute because you brought it up. I think at one point when I started my business, I had 40,000 in debt. I know people with more in debt over the years just kind of chipped away at it and don't have any current debt unless it's like in a property. But that was sort of a feat. I remember that being sort of a big deal. When I first started my business, I was like putting groceries on credit cards. So you had to like dig my way back out of that. And I know several people who still have student loans. What kind of advice do you recommend for people who are working their way out of debt?
Well, I would say the first thing, it depends on the sort of debt that you have. If we're talking about like student debt, that's one thing. If we're talking about like, if you have student debt, there's nothing that you can really do right now to change that. If you have consumer debt and you are still engaging in the behavior that got you into consumer debt, I would say the first step is addressing that behavior, because I have coaching clients that we've worked through this. They had debt, they paid it off, but then it didn't solve the base issues. And then they got back into debt. So I think if you have consumer debt, and again, it sounds simple, but it's not easy. Figure out your spending triggers, figure out why you're buying things you don't need. Because if you don't address those issues, as soon as you pay off the debt, you're going to incur more. I am a huge fan of what I call a lockbox bank account, which is a bank account at a totally separate bank that you do not let them give you a debit card for it. You do not save the password in your computer. And you set up auto transfers. Like if you get paid, if your paycheck goes directly into your savings account, you set up auto transfers between that into your lockbox account, and don't set it up so you can transfer money out. You want to make it as hard as possible for you to get that money. And then hopefully once you have enough money in there, you can use that to pay down debt. If you have school debt, I would make for sure that you have consolidated it at the lowest percentage that you can, and then use what's called the snowball method, which is where you pay the minimums on the biggest debt and pay the most on the smallest debt. Because emotionally, like financially and logistically, that sounds weird, but psychologically, totally paying off the smallest debt helps you stay motivated.
And you it's a little bit more get it out of the way.
Yeah, and it sounds a little bit more complex than I've explained, but if you just Google snowball method, you'll find a really good explanation of how to do it.
So let's go back to food, because I think that's really interesting, a connection. Tell me how you, on a daily basis, like the things that you really love, like cheese, how we talked about.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I mostly like, there are probably 15 meals, and I'm a vegetarian. There are probably like 15 meals that I am like legit so excited to eat. Okay, I should say there are a lot of meals that I'm very excited to eat. There are, of those meals that I love to eat, there are probably like 15 that are like quite healthy, but still are very actively enjoyable. And so I just know what those meals are, and that's what I eat most of the time. So there's a vegan pesto that I make. I make it bulk, and I love to eat it with zoodles, and it's so good I will literally lick my plate when it's done. I love Trader Joe's cauliflower and gnocchi. I love to make that with cooked carrots and butter and nutritional yeast. I could eat that for lunch every day for a month. So it's honestly just about finding things that I love. Like I could eat avocado with salt, Trader Joe's, everything but the bagel seasoning and nutritional yeast. I could eat that all day, every day. So it's just about, for me, finding foods that I legitimately enjoy, that help me sleep well, that give me the energy that I want to have, that help me stay focused. And this is not to say like I can eat some pizza rolls, like there are plenty of things that I like, that I eat, that are not like the world's most healthiest thing, but I have found things that are healthy, but also feel lovely and indulgent. One of the things that I talk about in Bank Boost is I call it the trap of the overly virtuous lunch, which is when you're like, I'm going to save money by bringing lunch to work. And then you bring like some stupid salad with like some dumb balsamic dressing, and like there's no cheese, there's no nuts, it's just fat. Vegetables. Yes. And then it gets to be noon, you're starving, and you look at it and you're like, I don't want to eat this. So then you don't. And then you go out to eat because you hate your stupid salad. And then not only have you spent the money going out to eat, but now you feel guilty because you wasted the money on your salad. It's going to be all wilty, and you feel bad because you didn't like keep your commitment to yourself. So instead of like bringing some overly virtuous lunch, bring something that you actually want to eat, that you will be like, oh my God, I'm so excited to eat my lasagna today. Or like, oh, I'm so excited to eat my pad thai. When we ask too much of ourselves in every area of our life, when we have to use tons of self-control and tons of decision-making in every arena of our lives, we're going to set ourselves up to fail. Like, it's okay to hold yourself accountable, and it's okay to like, challenge yourself. You don't have to give yourself everything that you want all the time, But it's also, you cannot say to yourself, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. I'm going to go to the gym for an hour and a half. And then I'm going to have like a low fat smoothie and then work for 8 hours after I ate a salad and then go home and like deal with all of my family's needs before my own. Like that is,
it's not sustainable.
No, it's not sustainable. And you're going to hate everyone and everything.
Right. It's like exercise.
Yes.
You overly discipline yourself. You can't keep it up.
Yeah.
When you talk, you remind me a little bit of, do you know Ramit Sethi's work?
I know who he is. I haven't ever read his work, but I know that he is beloved. So thank you very much.
You remind me of him because he always says like, he just like dogs on all the financial people who are like, if you just cut out your latte every day, you'd save this much. And this is how you're going to save your money. And he's like, bullshit. He's like, I call bullshit. He said, if having your coffee is what really makes you happy and it's like some fancy roast and it's like your favorite place down the road and it gives you whatever. He's like, if that's what makes you happy, do it.
Yes.
If it's a mindless thing that you do out of habit and you get in the Starbucks line and it's taking up your time and actually you think about it and it's really stupid, then cut it out. But it's like you say, coming back to what actually makes you happy.
Yes, yes. And I always say like, the issue is not like the latte that you have on Saturday where you like walk to the corner and like buy this beautiful latte from the independent coffee shop and then you like drink it while you like window shop in an adorable neighborhood. That is not the issue. The issue is like the latte that you don't even really enjoy, that you get from the drive-through, that you drink, in your car on the way to work in the office park and like it's gone by the time you get there and your whole car is like littered with cups and you don't even really remember getting it. Those lattes are the issue. And like not every latte is created equal. Just like not every makeup purchase, not every meal out. And I think budgeting software is great, but I think this is where it fails a lot of us because, Mint and YNAB, they can't differentiate between your beautiful intentional Saturday latte and your like habitual, unjoyful Tuesday morning latte. But you can. And so now that you know that, it would be beneficial to change your behavior accordingly.
You should have your own TV show.
Oh, that is very kind. I am on a local TV show once a month and it's lovely. And I
fabulous.
Very much. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. You're so funny.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. We've all heard about Virgos.
Yeah. I always feel like I need to be like, you guys, Beyonce's a Virgo. Some of us are cool, okay?
I love Virgos. Virgos are very cool. We need Virgos. I'm a Pisces, so I'm your opposite. How do you, but not just Virgos, because all of us are like this. We all have this and we all have Virgo somewhere in our chart. How do we, whether it's with money or food or exercise or our lives or our businesses, not fall into the trap of having to be perfect?
Oh, gosh. Well, I would say as a Virgo, I am somebody who is very motivated and convinced by scientific studies. Like if a neurologist, if a psychologist, if somebody sends me like an abstract with a scientific article, I'm like, yes, I believe it. But if you just if you just told me like this thing works for me, I'd be like, okay, cool. But if you give me something that's backed by like studies, I believe it. So having said that, there are multiple studies that show that practicing self-compassion, that people who practice self-compassion and are more likely to recommit to their goals and are more likely to be successful. So, and I think that's something that a lot of us like suspect, but when it is something that is like backed up by rigorous studies, to me that works. To me that when I feel like I want to beat myself up for falling off the wagon, knowing like, no, Sarah, like successful people practice self-compassion. And so for me, in my Virgo brain, that works for me. The other thing that I would say is I have come to realize, this is for me, I'm not saying this for everybody, but most of the time for me, perfectionism isn't actually about like delivering the perfect product or doing everything perfectly. It's about fear and it's self-sabotage. So knowing that, like, it's not actually about like, oh, wow, I'm really trying to deliver something perfect for my students and my clients. It's about like hiding imperfection and like sort of selfishly, like, because it takes me so much longer to do something perfectly. And while I'm being weird about it, there are people who would like benefit from my courses and my coaching that aren't getting it because I'm being a weirdo who's like hiding in my perfectionism.
Yeah, I see that a lot in my business. Like we'll post something on YouTube or social media, or we're not ready to release that program yet, or we're not ready to tell people about that yet because it's not perfect or it's not pretty enough. When I see some of the most successful people just like make, create, throw it out there, iterate, change it, do it again.
Yeah.
You have a really good blog post on 2 perfectionist tips that will free up your time, brain, and energy. And I'm
Yes.
mentioning this because, Sarah has a ton of really good resources and articles. So I would definitely check out her website at yesandyes.org. But do you want to talk a little bit about the power of getting something out there versus it being perfect?
Oh my gosh, yes. So one of the tricks that I talk about in that blog post is what I call the good enough timer. Because as a Virgo, I can just I can get real weird about it. Like I've got
on something.
Oh my God, I can get brush in the grout, So I will set a timer or I will set a deadline where it's just going to have to be good enough at this point. And for me, often I will make for sure that my assistant knows about this deadline. I will go public and say we're opening the cart on November 7th, because if I've created that public accountability, it removes the opportunity for me to be weird about it. It's just going to have to go. Also, I've had enough experiences where I have, I've just published the ebook and I'm sure there were typos, but you know what? People still loved it. They still got great results. And if they emailed me and were like, hey, I found a typo on page 13, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And then I change it and we all move on with our lives. And, they didn't email me and say the information in this book was compromised by the fact that, you didn't put the comma in the right place. Nobody has ever said that to me. So I think just seeing evidence in my life, you can do things imperfectly and it still works out. Having repeated evidence of that it really helps me.
So you're a rock star with money, with business, with travel. What's one of your biggest challenges right now?
I would say might sound strange. So my work-life balance has always been really important to me, but I feel like sometimes I hide in my work-life balance. If anybody follows me on Instagram, I was just in Morocco and the UAE for a month. At the beginning of December, I'm going to Palm Springs for a week. And then in January, I'm going to Costa Rica for 3 weeks. And when I travel, I usually don't work. And all of those things are great. And I love having that freedom. But I think that sometimes it's low-key self-sabotage, because there are things that I know I could be doing. There are things that I know I could be building, but I quote unquote don't have time because I am, so busy traveling all the time. So, which is not to say I'm going to stop traveling, but I think I want to be honest with myself about, am I doing this for the right reason, or am I creating situations that allow me to sort of underachieve? Because if the launch doesn't go the way I want to, I can say oh, well, of course it didn't go the way I wanted it to because I was in Costa Rica when it launched. You would be amazed how often my launches weirdly coincide with me being out of the country. So clearly there's something going on with that, because I am in charge of my schedule. So I would say that's something that I'm examining. Am I sort of self-sabotaging professionally or sort of underachieving? Because the thing is, I've been trying this new thing called working 40 hours a week. So instead of working 20. So I would say that's something I'm sort of examining. Am I hiding in work-life balance as a way to underachieve? Yes.
Okay. So can I ask a question out of curiosity and
a
possibility of reframing? Well, there's 2 things.
Yeah.
The first thing that came to mind is if I were to use your method with this particular situation, you value traveling and your freedom, and you also value building things.
Yes.
You're doing both.
That is true. I am doing both, but and I'm not saying that I'm overdoing the travel, but there have been multiple situations in the last year where I have exhausted myself on the East Coast for 12 days. I came home, I was home for 2 weeks, and then I left to travel for a month. That's 100% not necessary. That's weird. So I think, and the thing is, I am, again, because when I'm traveling, I'm not working.
And have you ever traveled and worked, or do you think there's an element, sometimes when I travel, I feel so de-stressed and so free. And I look at our shopping cart results and people just start buying stuff when I'm less stressed.
Oh, interesting.
So, and not working,
interesting.
Working. So is there actually a possibility? And if there hasn't been, maybe you could reframe your energy in that way. I mean, you yourself will know, but in certain cases, you launch something and then you leave and you travel, is it possible that you just having like more liberation and freedom in your energy would attract and magnetize more in your business?
For me, particularly, that hasn't been how it works because most of my course launches are live. Like I run my courses live. So I have to like be in the Facebook group. I'm replying to emails. And so like when I am traveling, I am legit not working. And so there's still passive income coming in and I'm still like getting inquiries from clients and, so there's still money coming into PayPal, but it's not quite the same.
Have you ever taken a trip and worked? So you're like, hey, I just lost this thing and I'm in Vietnam and isn't this cool? But I'm really, or you just separate the two?
Very occasionally. Like last year I was in Costa Rica and I did like a Facebook Live like for my course and it was fine. But what I find as the personality type that I am, like I already have a hard enough time unplugging. And so if I open the possibility of like, I'm going to lightly work, it's rarely, it very frequently becomes like, I'm working 4 hours a day from my beautiful hotel in Marrakesh. I know myself well enough to know that I'm kind of an all or nothing person. So I when I have tried to like kind of work when I'm traveling, it usually ends up like just consuming my trip.
Right. So where are some of the favorite places that you've been?
Oh my gosh. In terms of like, I would move there, Stockholm. I love it. Also, Minnesota has the highest population of Scandinavians outside of Scandinavia. So it's sort of like Stockholm is like Minneapolis, but better. And also, I think anybody who's been to Stockholm loves Stockholm. It's beautiful. It's clean. The people are incredible. Like it's literally built on a series of islands. I mean, it's beautiful. So I love Stockholm. I really liked Cambodia. I love Greece. I did my master's while living in Wellington, New Zealand, which is a beautiful, incredible place that I highly recommend to everybody. I mean, truly, I have enjoyed pretty much every place I've ever been to, with the exception, well, I'm glad I went, but Bolivia was extremely challenging to me. It was really hard. And it's there was a lot of challenges in Bolivia. So it's a place that I don't ever need to go back to.
That's so funny. And when you're traveling, do you use any sort of money stuff like points or frequent flyer miles or credit cards that give you points or?
So I use the Capital One Venture Card, which I am obsessed with. Number one, they reimburse you for global entry. Global entry includes TSA PreCheck. So I highly recommend getting that if you fly more than like once a year.
What made you choose that card over American Express Platinum?
Because American Express doesn't get accepted in many places.
Oh God, you're so right.
And I know, and especially abroad, they super don't accept it.
Yeah.
So I love Capital One Venture Card. So on my website, I have tons of travel guides and tons of blog posts related to travel. Awesome. And in almost all of those blog posts, there is an affiliate link for Airbnb. So like if it's a travel guide to San Francisco, I highlight here are 4 awesome Airbnbs in San Francisco. And if you've never used Airbnb, here's a link to get $40 off your first booking. And anytime anyone uses that link, I get $20 of credit at Airbnb. So every year I have probably about like $2,000 worth of free Airbnbs. Yeah. Yes. Wow. So if you've ever looked at my Instagram and been like, wow, these Airbnbs are great, they cost me $0 because my very lovely readers have been kind enough to use those affiliate links.
That is so awesome. That means there's still a lot of people who are still new to Airbnb. I love Airbnb.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I don't know why people wouldn't use it. Although I will say, like, I pretty much only use Airbnb if I'm staying someplace for multiple nights, because to me, the benefit of an Airbnb is that I get a kitchen and I feel like I'm like part of the neighborhood. But like, if I'm just there for the night, like I don't need a whole apartment, and the combination of like the taxes and the cleaning fee, and it can add up to like not being cheaper than a hotel. And also depending on where I'm traveling, like I was in Morocco and the UAE recently. In Marrakesh, I was like, I don't want to deal with like getting to this city I've never been before, and then like, trying to take a taxi to a residential neighborhood, and then like, what's the key code, and are they going to be there, and will they speak English? Like sometimes I just want to check into a hotel where the desk is always open. I know that the person checking me in, speaks English, and like my room is going to be cleaned regularly. So, I mean, there are definitely situations where I would prefer a hotel over Airbnb. But if I'm going to be someplace for multiple days, I definitely do Airbnb.
Do you have any courses coming up or boot camps or programs that you want people to know about?
Well, so I don't know when this is airing, but on November 7th, the cart opens for my most popular course, which is called Bank Boost. The cart opens on November, I think, 7th. The course starts on November 18th. It is a 5-week live course. And during it, we all work together as a group and we implement a fun budget, which is where you only buy things that you love on purpose. We rescue our wayward money, which is where you negotiate all your bills down. You call in all that money that you lent out to people. You cancel all the subscriptions that you don't use anymore. And then we also, this is optional, but I help people do it, figure out ways to bring in more money. Like, do you need a side hustle? Do you want to freelance? How can you raise your rates? How can you negotiate a raise? That kind of stuff. And when you combine all three of those things, it's bananas what you can accomplish. I mean, people regularly add thousands of dollars to their bank accounts in 5 weeks.
That must be so satisfying.
Oh my God, it's amazing. It's wonderful. And we have a really active Facebook group, and it's amazing to see what other people are doing. One of the tools we use in Bank Boost is we have a literal sticker chart called 20 Uncomfortable Things. And my goal is for everyone who participates in Bank Boost to do 20 uncomfortable things related to money over the course of 5 weeks.
Ooh,
and so they'll
20.
come into the Facebook group and say, what they're doing. And in the last round, there was a woman who made 40 cold calls in one day. So when you see Caroline making 40 cold calls and you're like nervous about like calling T-Mobile and negotiating your bill, you're like, oh my God, I can do this. Like, if Caroline can make 40 cold calls, I can like chat with the bot on T-Mobile.com.
Do you ever programs, or maybe, I don't know, maybe Bank Boost is part of this too, but like where you help people who are, say, entrepreneurs start going after bigger numbers? Because it's kind of like we all have these ceilings, right? And the ones making tens of thousands think hundreds of thousands are hard, and the hundreds of thousands think millions are hard. The millionaires think billions are hard, and so on.
Yeah.
Do you have any programs and/or advice for helping people break through psychologically their limits?
Well, I would say, so Bank Boost does help a little bit with that. Like doing 20 uncomfortable things and having accountability around it will definitely help. I mean, it's just a muscle. Like the more you do uncomfortable things, the more you realize it doesn't kill you and the more you realize the impact it can have. So that can help. I do one-on-one coaching with that kind of stuff. Although I would say sort of my area of expertise and my passion lies more with like helping people stop buying things they don't need. Because one of the things that it doesn't matter if you make 100 grand if you spend 120. You're better off, earning 50 and spending 30. So I'm happy to help people get past their limiting beliefs, but I'm just as happy to help you be like, so, why have you filled your house with things you don't want? Why do you keep buying clothing in a size that isn't right for you? Why are you buying all the things that your neighbors own, even though you don't ski? That's where my passion is.
It sounds to me, you say you help people with money, and you do, but the underlying sort of pivotal thing around everything you're doing is about self-awareness.
Yeah. And intentionality. Like when we live our lives on purpose, when we spend our time, money, and energy on purpose, everything changes.
Okay. And lastly, do you have any pieces of advice, any recommendation, any just sort of like words of wisdom that you find yourself telling people commonly, or something that just kind of springs forth in this moment that you want to share?
I would say that happiness is available to you in the version of yourself that you are right now. You don't have to save your happiness. You don't have to earn it. You can have the life you want. The life you want is more available to you than you realize.
Love it. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
And I can't recommend to the listeners enough it's like really good information and really good resources. And Sarah's just a freaking hilarious writer. So
thank you so much.
Go to yesandyes.org and check out more of her work. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Just loved our conversation.
Same.
If you're out there wondering, are there any flower essences to help us make more money or to attract more abundance and prosperity into our lives? There are. So there's a blend, and then there's one single flower that I love to recommend to people to work with. The first being Wild Abundance. And I would say that aside from attracting, like money and fortune, it's also about really recognizing the abundance in being in the present moment, as well as it tackles some of the self-worth issues that Sarah and I were talking about on the interview. Money is really just like an energy. So what is, if we feel like we want more money, what is standing in the way of allowing us to receive more? And so Wild Abundance is a great blend of flower essences to help us open, to be more uninhibited, to be more able to receive and really celebrate and be grateful for what we do have, which always creates more. The second remedy I tend to think of in terms of abundance, prosperity, and money is sweet pea. And sweet pea more tackles the patterns that we have in our cellular makeup and our minds. And these could even be generational or genetic patterns around lack and scarcity. That there is, for example, this illusion that there isn't enough to go around, that there isn't enough for everyone, so only certain people can be abundant. Or the idea that if I had a lot this day, then, the next day, maybe I wouldn't have enough to balance things out. And really, when we look at Mother Nature, we see that everything is an incredible abundance. Like Mother Nature far overproduces what's actually needed. In every case, there's just total abundance on this planet Earth. And that's a good reminder of what reality is for us as well. So sweet pea essence comes in and it helps us align with abundance mentality, that there is plenty and more to go around, and that we can let go and dissolve some of these old messages that we're holding on to around scarcity and lack, attracting in and magnetizing greater and greater levels of abundance and the ability to receive. Oh, the other one actually that just popped into my mind is also the red cup water lily. And that has a lot to do with our ability to receive in many, many different ways. And you can also go on our website and search any of these flower names for more information and blog posts written about them. But the red cup water lily is all about amplifying our capacity to receive and our willingness and our softness and our tenderness to receive. Thank you again for listening to the Flowerlounge Podcast, sponsored by LOTUSWEI and all of you listeners.
Thank you so much for listening to the Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard, or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at lotuswei.com.